My children were abused by their father's female to male trans lover. She picked up one of my kids over her head in one of her testosterone rages and threw him to the ground. Yeah. Luckily, they were at the beach and he landed in the sand, but still, this could have been a neck or back injury easily. And I was working. We worked in the same office and an engineering firm. And he was he did put on fingernails for his Halloween costume. So I thought he was I was right. My hunch was right, but I always was like dismissing my own instincts.
Yeah, your gut instinct.
So the hunch was, and he put on these long fake fingernails and dressed like, I don't know, like the person who comes to deliver death, So
Oh,
like
the Grim Reaper.
or Dark Angel. Yeah. So the Grim Reaper is what he was like. And so with really long, I thought, why would you go to work with those really long fingernails with around all the other men? It was just really weird. And they weren't like press on, and they weren't like little fake ones you can take on and off. He did manicured nails for that Halloween costume.
Did your ex try to look like you?
Absolutely. I mean, I've posted a picture of me and the ex, from just right after our divorce, and where he's totally trying to look like me, and right down to the head tilt, so
That's really creepy.
Very creepy. He had a nose job. He had a surgery there to his chin. And he bleached his hair. I went blonde young because I had early gray. So he immediately went blonde when I went blonde. I got bangs, he would get bangs. And so like the pictures that I share where, it's obvious he's trying to look like me back then. I mean, we both gained weight, and I hate it when I look in the mirror. It's when the first kind of hints of cross-dressing came up, and I didn't really understand it really entirely to be cross-dressing. To me, a cross-dressed man is fully cross-dressed. He's wearing a dress and makeup and maybe ladies' lingerie underneath. But my ex was like wanting to remove hair, and he started with his legs, and I told him that would make me very uncomfortable. And after some time of trying to persuade me, and me telling him, like, if you do that, I'm just probably not going to sleep in the same bed with you. I wasn't ugly about it. I just said, that's going to be just uncomfortable for me. I don't want your legs to brush up against me. And then I will be sleeping in the spare room. So he went ahead and did it anyway when I wasn't there. And it was prickly and everything. I didn't like it. He had some excuse that he was working in the field at the time. He said when he was doing that his leg hairs were being pulled by his blue jeans. Like, this was the lamest thing I've ever heard. This counselor then goes on to tell me how I might be a lesbian. Yes, I am. Yes, I am probably a lesbian because I've had married in love, fell in love with a man who had this inner woman. Yeah. And then she also said he wouldn't know for at least 3 months if he was a man or a woman. This was what she said. Yeah. And
where do they get this stuff from? Like, God.
Yeah, this is inside like our first 30 minutes of conversation. She recommended me to read a book called My Husband Betty, and you may have seen it. It's on some crossdresser websites. In fact,
I haven't heard of that one. It doesn't sound like something I want to read.
Well, I mean, the author of it speaks at some of these not trans, but crossdresser conference.
Most counsellors today will tell you that your only job is to affirm and support your partner's transition, and they'll tell you that your grief is a problem to be fixed. Or they might say that you're a lesbian like Tracy Shannon's counsellor did. I won't do that. I know that you're the one walking on eggshells, and I know the loneliness of being silenced in your own home. I provide a safe, private space for women to speak the truth without being called a bigot. If you need a counsellor who actually sees you, click the link below in the description and let's find your solid ground. Now back to the interview.
So today we are joined by Tracy. Tracy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Tracy Shannon, and I'm a trans widow living in Texas in the USA. Um, so a trans widow is a woman whose husband left to pursue life imitating a woman. So that was my experience. I share some of that experience with the public because trans widows have a front row seat to the fraud of the medical system and the abuse of the legal system. We had definitely had were first-hand eyewitnesses of the kind of people that these men are and how manipulative they are. So I'm an advocate for women's privacy, and I fight against the trans movement and all of its transgressions against all of our rights, not just women's rights, but all of our rights. And I often say that this is more than restrooms, more than sports. And a lot of people don't realize that this is not something that we can just manage. We must annihilate the trans ideology because it is a direct threat to all of our freedoms. How's that for you?
Absolutely. Yeah, that was amazing. It really does highlight all the different ways that it's terrible, but you just get called a bigot, and do you know what I mean? It's like really bad that people don't understand what they're signing up for. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about how you discovered what happened, like what your husband was doing? Was it a surprise, or how did you find out?
Yeah, it sort of revealed itself slowly over the course of our marriage, but we weren't married very long, about 9 months, when the first kind of hints of cross-dressing came up, and I didn't really understand it really entirely to be cross-dressing. To me, a cross-dressed man is fully cross-dressed. He's wearing a dress and makeup and maybe ladies' lingerie underneath. But my ex was like wanting to remove hair, and he started with his legs. And told him that would make me very uncomfortable. And after some time of trying to persuade me, and me telling him, like, if you do that, I'm just probably not going to sleep in the same bed with you. I wasn't ugly about it. I just said, that's going to be just uncomfortable for me. I don't want your legs to brush up against me. And then I will be sleeping in the spare room. So he went ahead and did it anyway when I wasn't there. And it was prickly and everything. I didn't like it. He had some excuse that he was working in the field at the time. He was hand augering wells. So this is manual labor in like oil and gas industry. And so he said when he was doing that his leg hairs were being pulled by his blue jeans. Like, this was the lamest thing I've ever heard. I never heard of a guy saying, "Oh, my leg hairs in these jeans." I mean, if it was such a big problem, I doubt men would be wearing jeans all the time, or they'd be
Yeah.
wearing, they wear a lighter material that or more.
I would hear more men complaining about it. I've never heard a
I've
man
never heard
complain
this
about that.
complaint. Of course, I was
No.
21, so I didn't give it a whole lot of thought. I just said, for me, this is too far. And I mentioned this to my mom, and then another incident where he came home from a business trip. He didn't really have the occasion for travel very often, but he was sent out of town, I think, for some type of seminar early in the marriage. And he, when he came back, I unpacked his suitcase for him. I guess I didn't ask if I could or anything. I just went about doing it. And inside the suitcase was one of my bras. It was a hot pink bra. I mean, one that I like never wore because it was cute, but there's not many things you could wear it with.
Yeah.
So, that it wouldn't show. I asked him, why is this in your suitcase? Like, what did you, and then how did it get there? Oh, I brought it with me because I missed you. So, yeah, I mean, I said, "Well, there's better things to take." There's
Yeah.
I have oversized
Photograph.
T-shirts, if you wanna take one of my oversized T-shirts to sleep in, or, you know, like, spray some of my perfume on it. I don't know if you miss me. I got a teddy bear that I always slept with, but I used it to separate my knees, back then I had bony knees. So miss that. And they would touch and leave little red dots. And so I had this teddy bear that I just stuck right between my knees. And I was like, you could borrow that, and don't take my bra. I
Yeah.
didn't think he was wearing it, but it was weird. And he just kept doing little things. And it wasn't until after our first child was born. Well, actually, there were some things before the baby was born. While it was just the two of us and no baby, he was pushing some kind of weird stuff in the bedroom. And by this time, I already was thinking cross dressing because he had shaved a little off his chest. He had a little bit of knuckle hair just like right here. Some guys have some of that, a lot
Mm-hmm.
don't, but he had some and he'd plucked that out, and that just made it look weird because now you have little red dots. And so there were just these things that kept happening, one thing at a time. And I can't remember if he had painted his nails or anything that I knew of before the
Yeah.
baby came, but he always had some kind of excuse. And, the hair is sticking out under his, like, shirts, and so he didn't want the hair showing, he said.
Yeah.
So, um but it was just weird. And then some of the sexual stuff he wanted to do was he wanted to be dominated, all this fantasy type stuff. He had a book that had little fantasies that you uh uncover. There was like envelopes in the book and you have to read it, and then you prepare for that fantasy. Well, it was weird stuff, and some of it I just wasn't comfortable doing. It was too far in the fantasy for me. So I guess I seemed like the big prude or whatever, that, crashing the party, like, no, we're not, this is just too far for me. And I just, I'm pretty plain Jane. I was an attractive woman and I had plenty of nice lingerie to wear and all this fantasy stuff. Like, one, we didn't have the budget for all these props and bullshit. So I just was like, no. And one of the fantasies he came up with, this wasn't even in the book, but he was that we would both be women and we would pretend to be lesbians. So that was weird, and I just was like, no, if I wanted to be a lesbian, first of all, she'd be hot, and she wouldn't have a dick, you know, and
Straight to the point.
yeah, because lesbians aren't into dicks. That was the end of that part, and then, um, I mean, I was definitely saying to some of my friends that he's a cross dresser, but I had never actually seen him cross dress. He probably did put on fingernails or something, and but I just can't remember specifically the date and time of that. And so it seems crazy. I stayed married to him. I was in college. He was finished with school, and I had more than a year left. And we were married. I was living out of town most of the time, so I was back and forth between our home and the college. So I wasn't around him all the time. And so when we were getting along mostly fine. And then once in a while, something strange would come up. And so I pretty much dismissed this, but right before I graduated, I was thinking about leaving, taking a job in another city. But like, to all my friends and family, he seemed nice. And so when I discussed this with friends and family, they're like, all relationships have things. They kind of taught me, like, why are you wanting to do this? They thought there was another man, and there wasn't another man. There were men who were flirted with me or were friends, and I did compare, but I wasn't going to date one of them.
Yeah.
So, and the comparison was just like, it doesn't seem like they had the hang up. Like, there's this kind of hang up that I didn't quite understand, and I didn't really Like, I didn't know this was gonna be a big issue going forward. In fact, he's like, "I'm not gonna do that stuff. If you don't, want me to do any of that, I won't." So I didn't know there was this big history of cross-dressing that he had, and, he never had shared that. So it was only so then he started pressuring me once I decided to stay, and we were getting along well. So it wasn't long before he said, "Let's have a baby." It was big pressure, big pressure. He wanted to have a baby before he turned 30. Like, we were very young. So at this point, I'm now 26, and so we have a baby, and when the baby was just 3 months old in the hospital for, having respiratory, illness and a gastrointestinal illness, nearly died. Uh, my then husband didn't come up to see the baby hardly at all, and when he did come, he announced that, "Well, I have something to tell you." So it was close to Halloween, and so it was around those first, 4 years of marriage, I did notice, like, around Halloween would be the time that he kinda tried to push the envelope with this stuff, and I was, working. We worked in the same office and an engineering firm, and he was, around the he did put on fingernails for his Halloween costume, so I thought he was using I was right, my hunch was right, but I
Mm,
always was, like, dismissing my, own
you,
instincts
yeah,
because
your gut
yeah.
instinct.
So the hunch wa
Yeah.
and he put on these long, long fake fingernails and dressed like, I don't know, the like the person who comes to deliver death. So,
Oh,
like,
the Grim Reaper.
yeah, or Dark Angel, yeah, so the Grim Reaper is what he was like, and so, with really long I thought, "Why would you go to work with those really long fingernails with around all the other men?" It was just really weird, and he put they weren't like uh, press on, and they weren't like little, fake ones you can take on and off. He did, manicured nails for that Halloween costume.
God, how
Oh
can you
my
do your work though with really long nails on?
Yeah, manicured nail like,
Like
you know,
acrylics.
sculptured sculptured. So, I'm like, "How do you" like, that's gonna be very hard to get off, and also, how did he know how to do this? I mean, to this day, I've never done sculptured nails on myself, so this was, like, really setting off alarms in my head, and by this time, um, I guess we had a baby or I was pregnant, I can't yeah. So he comes and tells me yeah, we had the baby already, and so he comes and tells me at the hospital, "Well, I have to tell you something. I've always had an issue. I've had a problem with cross-dressing." So, like, confirming that hunch I had all the way back to when I was in college, before we even had, you know, and right at the end of my college,
Yeah,
the hunch was confirmed. I'm thinking, "Oh my gosh, I was right." I said, "Well, then, um, we need to go to marriage counseling then." And I really did believe he loved me, at the time, back then. And I really felt like if there was something that would ruin our marriage or end it, that he would stop it. I really believe that. He was, when we dated, and even in our marriage, he seemed real sweet. He was the type to bring flowers. He did a lot of thoughtful
yeah,
things, but, there was just this lack of respect going on. There was actually he would go to, uh, titty bars, for lunch, and for lunch break, and I thought that was wrong and disrespectful,
yeah,
and, I mean, some women don't mind, I guess, but I did mind, and so, it just felt so wrong, and it didn't fit with the person I thought I knew. Like, "Why are you going places like this?" And, I had found on his computer once before we had our first child, some pictures of some women in lingerie, and, again, I'm like, first of all, these are such ugly women, and they're, like, the lingerie super tacky, like, these women had big feet and big hands, so,
Were the men then
they were men. Yeah, I mean, I just didn't realize it at the
at
time.
the
So,
time?
I mean, keep in mind this is before, like, we weren't on the internet a lot. I mean,
Yeah,
or I think it was when you had, like, America Online, and then you turn on your internet and it's neater,
dial up.
and people were, you couldn't get a phone call.
Yeah, I
You're
remember dial up.
Yeah, so it wasn't quite you weren't quite online like you are today.
Yeah,
There weren't like a whole lot of things. I mean, there were probably some chat rooms he found back
yeah,
then, but and there was probably some like websites of people who shared their cross-dressing journeys, but I did not at that time, until he told me, like, really, really believe he was a full-blown cross-dresser, but apparently he was, and behind my back, and that's what I found out when the baby was in the hospital near death, and, um
the way he presented that, though, he actually admitted it was a problem when he told you.
well, yeah, he didn't say probably use the word problem.
Okay.
I think what he actually said was, "I've cross-dressed since I was a teenager."
Mm,
So, we then went to counseling because I believed that he wanted to save our marriage, and yeah, and I guess he did wanna stay married, but, he didn't wanna, stop doing things that were harming the marriage. So, he was a manipulator. So the
yeah. How
person we
was the
went to,
counsellor?
yeah, uh, he chose his counselor, and the counselor was very pro, LGBT, and back then, you didn't separate those 2. I mean, the LGB was not separated from the T. There was no that's it. If you're, an ally, then you're an ally to the T too. So, and I didn't know that. I didn't know. Like, I would have
Yeah,
been like, "Why are we going to someone who specializes in this community? Because really we need marriage counseling." So we go and she tells me, well, first she presents this scenario where he gets a PO box, and I, or he'll receive like ladies magazines and ladies catalogs for clothing there, and he can order things and learn how to do makeup reading these magazines and things like that, and then he'll get invitations to go to like cross-dressing weekends with other men, like because they have like these kind of conferences that they go to, which is probably totally perverted. Yeah, so I was like, no. She said, "Well, if you don't see it, out of sight, out of mind, and it shouldn't bother you. And you'll just have your marriage and you won't, this shouldn't bother you." And I said, "Well, I don't want my husband having this secret life from me and a whole different PO box that I'm not knowing what's going on. That's not something that's going to sit well with me." And she said I was very close-minded, because I wouldn't allow this. And then she was trying to work out some type of compromise where I'd be okay with some cross-dressing, and I just said, "No." I mean, that's a complete turn off to me, thinking of my husband dressed up, putting on lipstick, I no, just no, thank you. And then she asked me, where I went to college, and I said, "We went to the same college. We met on college break and then ended up being I needed transportation back to school, and he had offered, so I took him up on it, and that's how we started dating. And we were, in fact, had a lot of mutual friends from our home church, in our hometown. So we had met uh, in the youth program, at the church. And then he, this counselor, then goes on to tell me how I might be a lesbian. Yes, I am. Yes, I am probably a lesbian because I've had, married in love fell in love with a man who had this, inner woman. Yeah, and then she also said he wouldn't know for at least 3 months if he was a man or a woman. This was what she said, yeah, and we
where
had
did they
to
get this stuff from? Like, oh God.
Yeah, this is inside like our first 30 minutes of conversation. She recommended me to read a book called My Husband Betty. And you may have like seen it. It's on some crossdresser websites. In fact,
I haven't heard of that one. It doesn't
it's
sound like something I want to read.
well, I mean, the author of it speaks at some of these not trans, but crossdresser conference. To me, there's no difference. A trans is
Yeah,
a
well, they did. They put all the terms under one umbrella, didn't they? When they
yeah. I
came
mean,
up with
and that's what
trans.
they used to do. They used to use a graphic, and I had saved it somewhere, maybe on my other computer. But they used to use a graphic, and it was a trans umbrella, and they put crossdressers on underneath that umbrella. And now they try to say it's something different. Like, those are the perverts and we are the real, we are really women, the trans. And so it's really such a big scam, and it hurts women most of all, women and girls. But this, just my experience with this fraudulent con artist of a, husband and the counselor as well that, he picked. And I'm thinking this person's going to help us resolve this, probably tell him how unhealthy this is for our marriage and him potentially. No, this is something that she said he, should pursue. And also she had the audacity to tell me that this makes him a better husband. Like this makes him a more understanding. Like really, like a man like slipping into your clothes. Like now I'm starting to understand like why my panties were stretched out sometimes when I put them on. I mean, I was thinking, "Oh, I must have lost a few pounds," and
Oh
yes,
no, it's not
yeah.
that.
So I put on my boots and, they're a little loose, like, "Oh, wow," I lost some weight in my calves, but it was him wearing my stuff, and then it started to make sense when I had the baby. I had some types of clothes that even though I did lose the weight and get down to like a size 6, I was no longer like a size 4 or 2 like I was before the baby, and there were some types of clothes that I just, wasn't gonna wear anymore. Um,
Yeah,
and, some of those, like, really short Daisy Dukes, with the
yeah,
little embroidered daisies on the front. I mean, I had some really cute outfits. I mean, I was very young, and,
yeah.
so
But
I
you
was trying.
change when you become a mother anyway, don't you? You don't want to wear the same clothes.
I mean, yeah, I'm like, I was in a different, stage of life. I really didn't wanna attract attention to my legs because guess what? Now I had stretch marks. So I was, just changing my style, and also I was a little bigger, definitely not fat or anything. I'm just donating some of those clothes, and he went, "Don't get rid of that. I really like that." And I'm like, "What is this reaction?" And
I
it
wouldn't have
didn't.
thought they would even fit him though.
Probably they did, because like, in my
Really?
early pregnancy, I could fit, like, his jeans. So,
Okay.
"Hey, yeah, I'm a cross-dresser, I wore my husband's jeans," because they were a tiny bit bigger. That's what the haters will say, "You're a cross-dresser." Yes, I put on his Wranglers or whatever they were, while
So
I
that's normal though. When
stopped.
I was pregnant, the midwife told us to wear my husband's boxer shorts because they would feel more comfortable. Or that a
Yeah,
lot of women did that. So
yeah. If, it
that's
wasn't a
not cross
turn
dressing
on.
though.
I just,
It's
if he had a
just
little more
finding
room in the waist.
clothes.
I mean, he
Yeah.
didn't have much room in the butt, but he did have some room in the waist. So, I did wear his jeans the one time, and then I went shopping and bought my own maternity clothes. So he was thin, so he could have fit into those.
Okay.
He might not have pulled him up over his gut, but he did fit him. So, yeah, and because men don't have any hips, he could probably fit into those and just
Yeah.
pull him up to the love handles or whatever. And then after seeing that therapist, I told him, never go back to that therapist, and if you go back to her, we're getting a divorce. And so I thought, he wasn't going to her anymore. And he's like, I won't do any of that. I will, I want to save our marriage. So I thought we were pretty good until the next cross dressing, thing would happen in our house. Usually what I would find out was I would come home and I would smell that smell of acetone. Remember, he did the sculpture nail. So that was a skill he developed. but I guess he didn't realize I would be able to smell that, and I would smell it. I was like, "Where is that coming from?" And I would check the garage, and I really wasn't thinking, "Oh, you must be cross-dressing." I'm just like, "Did my nail polish remover spill somewhere?" I'm looking, and I'd open up the garage, um, garbage can, and I'm like, "Why does a garbage can smell like acetone?" And then he'd admit, "Well, I put on fake nails and then I took them off," or I would notice his nail beds were real torn up, and then I'd see the shape, like, kind of the rounded shape there and then where he had put on a fake nail, and I said, "Did you put on fake nails?" And he would admit it, so he only would admit as much as I would discover. One time I found a Walmart bag with, some women's underwear and bra in it that he must have used when I was not around, and I did go with my, um, son, my little son, he was the only child for 4 years, so I would take him fishing at my parents' at fishing camp, and so my ex, he said he was playing golf, but he was probably, not just playing golf, he was probably cross-dressing his butt off whenever I went out of town with my son. And then, yeah, he just would convince me that he wasn't doing that for a time, and then he'd, say, "I wanna have another baby," and I had had a miscarriage, so I got fixated for a while on my miscarriage. I miscarried twins, and then and I had cancer with that pregnancy and for a year after. And
Goodness.
so yeah, so I thought, so I think, like, he was nice, during that time. He was good to me during that time of my recovery, and I overlooked, like, we'd had the problem in the past, and if there was something going on during that time, I wouldn't have been able to handle it, so I either purposely didn't notice or that he really didn't do anything and he kept it, under wraps. So, I was convinced that was in the past. We had another baby as soon as I was clear to have another baby after the cancer. And I thought things were good. We had moved into another house, and shortly after that baby, then I found out he was cross dressing again. And that was um, really devastating for me at that time because I had, trusted him and I hadn't been focused, like I had been so focused on my um health and having another baby, and I really trusted him because he was good to me during that time,
Yeah.
and I thought we were past all that, and then I find, he was doing things. In fact, I think I found he had ordered hormones on the internet and had them shipped to our house, so which is dangerous, and he had a friend on the internet that he met in a game online that was telling him he was trying to convince her because I played that video game with my kid,
Yeah.
4-year-old, and because it was just like a Disney game, and
Right.
so, lots of kids played it, and a lot of parents played it with their kids, and so he was talking with this woman, trying to convince her to convince me to allow him to cross-dress. So this was after our 2nd child, and I didn't know about this. I found about this, like, at the end of our marriage through some text threads and chats and emails that I found that he was admitting to someone else about all that. But I did notice that this one woman that I played online with, that we both were friends and played with online, that, she helped us, like, build our powers in the game so, like, we could help our son play and like, take care of the enemy. So, that she, like, stopped talking to me, like, she, like, just quit, um, and I thought that was weird, and so what was happening was she didn't like him pressuring her, and she didn't wanna, like, say anything to me and, like, cause a problem in our marriage, so that's why she just basically disappeared. You could, like, block people in the game and not see them anymore, so I guess she just was trying to not, be involved with us and not tell me. And, she was afraid she was just gonna unload, like, "Hey, your husband's trying to convince me,"
Yeah.
or maybe she thought I was a weirdo. Who knows? She may have thought I was a weirdo, but
I doubt it if he's trying to convince her to pressure you into doing stuff. That's just odd anyway. Like, I
yeah,
mean,
she probably felt uncomfortable.
yeah, I would have thought so. Unless she was into it as well, I just wouldn't think that anybody would accept that.
Yeah, it was weird that he was befriending someone in the game anyway, like a
Yeah.
woman. And so, just very weird. So, um, after that baby, the second baby was 7 months old, like he randomly is like, and I was just started back on birth control because I just finished breastfeeding. And he's like wanted and oh, sex. Sex was not regular in the marriage. It just wasn't not, in our on the average it wasn't. I mean, early marriage was something different, but and the on the average we just like we were way below the average married couple. So and I would think I mean, I wasn't like super horned up and ready to go, but I was just wondering what is going on here? Is it how I look? What is it about me?
Yeah, you start
Yeah.
doubting yourself, like, oh, am I not attractive and stuff like that. If you,
What is it? And is it the
yeah,
stress? I tried to be perfect. I mean, I really, really tried to be perfect. I was a perfectionist. I was not perfect, but I was a perfectionist. And I'm like, what is it about me? Is it that I've been bitchy sometimes? Like, but all women are bitchy sometimes. Ask any man, their wife will be bitchy sometimes. And I admit, I was. And I definitely sometimes for a very good reason. But I just thought it was me and I would try harder to like keep the house really nice, try to prevent stress, let him do whatever he wants. He wanted to do um flying, get his pilot's license. Okay, go do that. I don't want you to be stressed. I'll stay home with these kids and, and never have a break, which is fine. I actually really love being home with my kids, but I did notice like I felt like it was wrong. They didn't want to be home with us. And then he did softball, soccer, golfing, poker, and he was in the choir. And I'm probably forgetting something, but he did
that's
lots
a
of stuff.
lot.
Yeah, like, this is a man with, 2 kids at home and then 3. So, when I was on the birth control, just started it, I think I was about not quite 10 days in, and my doctor had said, "You need to be 10 days into this pills before you have unprotected sex." He's like, "Oh, it's okay. We probably won't get pregnant." And because I was like, "Hey, I might get pregnant if we, have sex right now." And he's like, "That's okay, I'd like another one anyway, wouldn't you?" And I was like, I guess if it happens, I would welcome another one." And so, now I'm like a different religion. I'm Catholic. So we're like, yeah, we're always open to babies now. But back then we had a different way of thinking. And so we did have that discussion like, oh, I don't know, I'm not the birth control. And so we went ahead uh, and of course, I got pregnant. And that was my daughter. And so in that marriage, we had 3 babies, and that's it, besides the miscarriage twins. And so she came, and not long after she was born, of course, then I was, alerted to more cross dressing, something I found in the house, and they alerted me to that. And again, that was devastating. In fact, whenever the trans talk about trans. I don't believe in that. But the men in disguise are always saying that they're, oh, they're plagued by suicidal ideation and they have this high rate of suicide. It's like, I don't know how many of us women who are trans widows actually thought about that. And if we did, could we get help? Because we're going through a divorce, we got to go through psychological evaluations, and any weakness we show is used against us, So I would look at our house and I'd drive up to the house. It was a 2-story with a little bridge going from the bedrooms over to the playroom. You could see the bridge through the big window. And I would think, one day they're gonna find me hanging from there, because that's just how tormenting the marriage, was getting. And
Yeah.
it was mainly that issue, and I was being very gaslighted about, what was going on, and, he was blaming me. So, yes, so I did believe that, the lack of intimacy was something about me, and
Yeah.
either how I
Was
looked, how I acted, or didn't do enough to make him feel not stressed.
Do you think you was cross-dressing more after you had the babies?
For sure, yes,
Yeah.
because, although he isn't an honest person, I do believe that this was like, a bad coping mechanism, for relaxing,
Yeah.
and he liked to relax. Like I said, he loved all these, hobbies, and this was to relax him. So, we moved out of state for a job, and we had some time apart whenever we eventually were going to move back for his job. We moved back to Texas, and I ended up being in Ohio with my 3 children. And during that time, he was really cross dressing his buns off because I wasn't around. He found someone online, and that person wanted to encourage all this. She wanted to fully transition a man to live full time as, fake woman. Those weren't the words she used, but, she wanted to take a man all the way. That was what she wanted to do. She had helped men cross-dress, including her fiancé, and so she was having, like, a internet affair with my husband, and, that's kind of when things really, really escalated in the marriage, and, I filed for divorce when I came across their messages, and what led me to find all that was some transactions in one of our bank accounts and a new credit card he had opened. He had bought a bunch of clothes and stuff, so, I confronted him about that, and then I got a lawyer. Then it was like after that from that point on, it was like 3 years of divorce. Total insanity, was it 3 years? Maybe it was like 2 years or 2.5. So, from 2008 till 2010. So, we ended up divorcing in Texas, and, in the Texas courts, um, I was asked about my ability to co-parent with this trans woman because I am a politically a conservative. And they, which wasn't a secret because they found some of my stuff online that I had written and advocated for. And it was all logical things like, no protections for pedophiles, I mean, but they were trying to say I was against LGBTQ entirely
They give
because,
themselves away?
yeah, they did. And like, you actually have a problem that I'm against pedophiles because they wanted to include protections and extend it all the way to pedophile. They wouldn't exclude pedophiles. So, that was really weird that I had to argue in court about my own, um, fitness to be a parent and my ability to co-parent with this man simply because I'm a Christian and conservative.
And
So
you are
that was
against
really troubling.
pedophiles. That's just insane.
Yeah, and then they asked me, or they said that they said that it was a problem that I was using his, real pronouns, like I was calling him he, him, and
So you are
calling him
correctly sexing him.
yeah, and I was
That's what I
dead
say.
naming him in court, and, that they wanted to stop that in court. So we had it for a week in court, and every day we had to argue about pronoun usage, and his attorneys wanted to have me held in contempt. So we had to fight about this every day. So at the end, I actually had a judgment that I won because, they drove up the cost of the attorney fees because we had to argue about this stupid crap every day. So now I never collected on that judgment because it's very hard to collect. And but I did win the judgment. But
Well done.
yeah, just I think, here in Texas, we had to argue about this, and this was back in 2010 in court. And today, there wouldn't be an argument. Most of these judges would say, this is a female according to the law, and you all have to, abide by that, or you'll be held in contempt. So nowadays, you will follow that trans ideology in court.
Did he have it?
We just
Is
defend
it
it.
a gender recognition certificate in America as well? Did he have one of those?
No, and it would be by state anyway if there was such a thing. But it's pretty much like that. In certain states you can, self ID. and get your gender marker. They call it, really it's a sex marker, and it's
Yeah.
always been called a sex marker until the trans movement came along and started calling everything gender. So you can change that. And in fact, in Texas, as far back as at least 2009, but really actually earlier, because some of the big time activists had theirs changed earlier. But it started being a real thing in Texas when they kind of covertly do this. This doesn't make the news or anything. 2009, a Republican, so where I'm from, that is your conservatives. Then, and the conservatives had control of everything, and unanimously, without debate, in the Texas House, they passed, and in the Senate, they passed a bill that in our family code, that if you have a court order that says you have or change your sex, a court order is sufficient. A court order would be sufficient to change your sex. So then people went to court, these men and in some cases women, but usually men went to court, had their sex identifier changed on their driver's license and on their birth certificate, and sometimes without even a record that it had been changed. Like they could get
My
the judge
God.
to not put an amendment on there showing an amendment certificate.
So what
So
about sort of like criminal history and stuff like that? Is that all erased?
right.
Like,
So if your legal documents say you are a man, then it's going to reflect man if you've done a crime. It's going to say female if you've done, whatever your documents say, that's what goes in the record forward. And so that's a big problem that's trying to be corrected just through like executive orders and administrative rule in Texas. But we still have in our family code that a court order is sufficient. So when the trans activists take this up to the Supreme Court has to look at our legislative code, and that is going to dictate. And because we did not correct that, we're on the losing end. So that needs to be corrected, something I'm advocating for in Texas. And then, other states can follow the model we're doing here, but there's a group here in Texas or in the United States that has kind of been the louder voice on this issue. And unfortunately, although I'm happy about some of the legislation that they've passed, and I supported the bill, but it only addresses government code. Now we have conflict from government code to family code, penal code, and also like there's education code. You got to hit all the areas where this has been affected, because the trans movement's pretty smart. They slowly change things while nobody was paying attention, and now that it's so overt, we're saying stop and let's define what a woman is in the law, and that's all fine. And we that we do this because now we have to state the obvious in our code, but we've got to address all the other areas or we're going to have a problem when we go to court. So so that's why like for me, a lot of people know who I am, but I'm not part of like the big really well-funded network that is getting stuff done and real connected with all the big movers and shakers in the USA. I don't believe this is just about sports, and I
no,
don't
it's
believe
not.
this is just about restrooms and our privacy in restrooms. No, like if you give us those two things back, we're still lacking a lot. We still
Yeah.
don't have the right of freedom of association as long as there's falsification of sex. So we've got to completely end that state by state. And some states will be harder, because like California is going to be harder. That's why we need the federal government to weigh in and provide penalties
Yeah.
where they're doing these things that harm, especially harm women, but not just women. This is a violation of conscience. This is a violation of your free speech. This is a violation of freedom of association. So it's totally anti-First Amendment to be, pushing this anti-truth, stuff into our mainstream and in our laws. And so any type of bureaucratic enforcement or administrative enforcement, that has to be undone.
Yeah. Has President Trump getting in changed anything?
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
obviously he's brought in that, I don't know what you call it, but he brought in the woman as an adult human female thing, didn't he? when he
Yes,
first came
it was a
in.
very good and well-written executive order.
That's the one.
And that was done by a woman from Texas, and,
Yeah.
like, her name escapes me. Jessica Steinman wrote
Yeah.
that. Very good, very good. She's running for, Congress right now, so hopefully she'll win. She's, very good. That was a very well-written executive order. Now we need to codify it,
Yeah.
like, what's wrong with Congress? We gotta codify that, and all the states need to follow that as well. I mean, I think that was pretty all-encompassing, except the only thing missing, if we do all the things but we don't, like, acknowledge what's happening to the women. So the
Yeah.
women in the marriages, the trans widows.
Yeah.
This is a form of abuse. It is coercive control, and I know a lot of people hate that. But that is what it is. And we shouldn't have to defend what happened to us or why we stayed so long, or because we are gaslighted, just out of our minds gaslighted. And there's coercive control. You're made to believe it's your fault. So think about all these psychological things that's happening to the woman. Now think of the children. So when we got divorced, my kids were mandated to counseling, state, ordered by the state into to counseling, where they were told they could no longer call their father dad. So this is state ordered denial of truth, completely unconstitutional. Of course, who has the money to fight that? No, how are you going to fight that? In our law, it said he's, got the court order. There's no way to fight that. Our own state was against me. Our own state. So it was
And
very disorienting,
mhm.
and disillusioning to realize this could all happen to me in Texas, and I have no leg to stand on because our own government said a court order says this person is, changed their sex, so they have.
So you
And
were
so
abused by your husband, your ex-husband, and then you were abused by the state as well?
they back it up. They're backing up emotional and psychological abuse, manipulation. I mean, most trans widows have a lot of problems after, everything unravels, and during the marriage, like health problems. And I still have, because it is like a
It's the
problem of
stress, isn't it? You hold it in your
I
body.
think it causes you complex PTSD,
Yeah.
and I do believe that's what it does to the kids too, which it causes problems with future relationships. I mean, I'm not saying like we're all terrible women and we can never have one,
But you
but we're
struggle to
definitely,
trust, don't you?
yeah, the trust thing is big, and this causes internal stress for the rest of your life. Like, can I trust this man? Is he cheating? Does he have a secret life? What can I trust? I thought my first husband loved me and was this really nice man who wouldn't do horrible things to hurt me, and he did the most horrible things, just try to take my kids away from me because he had this fetish, and he didn't want to pay child support. I mean, when I wanted to leave him when the first baby was a little toddler, after one of the cross-dressing things, I was like, "I'm leaving." And he's like, "Well, I'm not paying child support." Well, I believe that. I believe, like, he wouldn't pay it, and that I was wondering, "How am I going to do this?" And so then I decided, I had no choice but believe his lies, and I always went to him for the answers until I went to a therapist that said, "Quit going to him for every answer, he's lying to you. So you need
Yeah.
to start trusting your own gut."
Yeah.
And it's very hard. You have a sense of learned helplessness when you're in a marriage like that. The kids have that because nobody comes to their rescue when there is abuse. My children were abused by their father's female to male trans lover. She picked up one of my kids over her head in one of her testosterone rages and threw him to the ground. Yeah. Luckily, they were at the beach and he landed in the sand, but still, this could have been a neck or back injury easily. And she hit him. She would spank them and threaten to spank if they were mislaunch a pronoun. So that was very, very traumatic for the children, and they don't know they don't know anyone else's world. They only know the weird world they are born into. and they might know it's unfair, and they didn't want to come to me with some of the things that was happening. My daughter told me, only this year, no, not this year, but last year, and we just had New Year 2025, that her dad used to smack her on the butt all the time, all the way till she was 16. And she'd tell him not to do that. And he said, that's what girls do. And, that's like a little violation. That's like a little transgression. And then trying to say, like, what's wrong with you? This is what girls do,
Was he saying that he was a girl and that's what girls hit each other on the
Yeah,
bum? Like,
it's causes total cognitive dissonance. They're made
that's really
to,
creepy though.
it's just making your kids deny reality, causes cognitive dissonance, it causes learned helplessness, it creates problems with bonding in a relationship. So all this stuff, although you're like looking at my kids, you think they're just fine, but that doesn't mean that they haven't had problems that they had to work out. Like one of my
Yeah.
kids is super very religious. Done very well with working out all the issues in the context of his religion, which is Catholicism. He's done a lot of work. He did the work
Good.
like really early in his adulthood. And, one hasn't done much work, and but he's done a lot of grieving, which I think in a way is work.
Yeah.
And then, my daughter, I, she's definitely, I think, figuring things out in the last, couple years, and she's doing
Yeah.
well. She has her own baby now. And I think when you have your own kids, and my oldest has his own, and so I think that you do figure out like, wow, how could a parent do these things, and
Yeah.
just they kind of realize just how
Uh,
really bad it is.
uh,
And but they're the children, so children are going to naturally love their parent. And I would say that, like, probably there is love, even if the one is estranged and doesn't wanna talk to his dad, but I do think they all love their dad, but they're adults now and dealing with it all in their own way. But these children, as children, they don't have a voice. They're forced to be around these men, and sometimes women, and all their friends and all that weirdness, going to church with a whole bunch of cross dressers, drag queens at the church, that's not, and for me, I totally lost the ability to direct what kind of things my children were exposed to
yeah.
and be able to
Because
protect them.
because you had to send them to him, and I bet that was really hard for you because as a mother you worry so much when they're not with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the reason a lot of women stay. Like, they think, well, if he leaves, it'll be worse and the kids will be going over there because you don't have any
Yeah.
guarantee that the state isn't going to say like they did in my case. And my case was the first case in Texas of a so-called transparent sharing custody. So we had joint
Right.
custody.
So they spent half the time with him.
Well, not quite half, but,
Okay. But quite a
nowadays you
lot.
might be more likely to get half,
Yeah.
but pretty close to half. So he had extended visitation. So first, third, and fifth weekend, but also one night during the middle of the week. And then, like a large chunk of, the summer holiday. And then a bunch of split time with the other, like, breaks, like the Christmas break, Thanksgiving break, those were alternated according to odd and even years, and then same with spring breaks, alternated, but so he had, like, I wanna say 46% or 43%, so very close to half the time. He did have to pay child support, which I think he thought was extremely unfair. However, he was making at the time, like in the mid 100s, thousands of dollars, and then I was making like $36,000 with 3 kids. Um, yeah, he needed to pay child support. Like, you can't just financially abandon your family, including your wife. You just because you don't love her anymore, or maybe never did, you don't just get to drop her, with no means to provide for the kids and leave everybody in poverty. That's just not fair. So, Yeah, I just feel like there's no real recognition still, even with everything that we're doing that's good in America. There's no recognition that this is child abuse. And this type of child abuse is happening not just in homes, but it's happening in schools. It's happening when a teacher comes to school and he's a man, but he's saying, now I'm Mrs. So and so, or I'm mixed, or I'm
Yeah,
call me they, thems, or whatever, they, them. I mean, this is total gaslighting. This is causing this is abuse to their minds, and it should not be allowed. And I firmly believe that trans adults should not be around children after everything that I've been through. This is now when they are adults, if they want to make the decision to be around cross dressers, because that's what they really are. They're not trans or cross dressers. They're just more dedicated to the experience than some guys. So they don't need to be around children at all. And if we don't acknowledge that this is a type of abuse, or at the very least, this is psychologically harmful for children just to be around it, no matter how innocently the offending parent thinks they are. This is just bad for children, and it shouldn't be around them. And instead, we've prioritized the feelings and the desires of adults over children. And I don't know. Women, we definitely come out on the short end of the stick of this, and
definitely.
our rights need to be, and what's good for us needs to be considered, and in the courts, and it's not. And so I am probably the only one that I know of in the USA out here saying, "Hey, this is psychological abuse to the women and the children when it's happening in the marriage,
Yeah,
and also it's abuse when it's happening in the schools, or even if it's one child in the school. It doesn't just affect that one child.
yeah,
This affects the whole classroom. This affects every teacher and every student in the building. And so I'm out here saying we need to annihilate this whole ideology and recognize that, that what happens in the home, there's so many places where the law wants to get involved. And we need to recognize the rights of the parent and the rights of these children. Children have rights to not have chaos in their home. And that's what this is. It's chaotic. And we need to have I'm writing a policy brief which will, support that we need to have a study on this population. We are not studying this population. We need to study the population of children affected by trans identifying parents. And we need to have a study on the psychological, emotional effects and financial effects, and also what is the long-term societal impact of these children who've experienced this specific type of abandonment by a parent. Because that is what it is. It is a type of emotional abandonment. It is a ghosting of, for if a man does it, as a father does this, they're losing a father figure. And so we do need to study the impact. There is a cost to society. It's an increase in the risk factors, just like with anything else, just like with divorce. And this population needs to be studied open-mindedly, without the bias, that we typically have when trans identities are introduced.
absolutely. I think it affects so many different areas of life, and I think because of that, it's very hard to get across how complex it is and how devastating it is. So I think that's why it is important to show the sport stuff, although I agree that that is just a tiny part of it. I think it does open people's eyes. People do take notice. What? There's men and women's sports. Do you know what I mean? They do. It's like one of the easiest ways to highlight the problem of it.
Yeah,
But
and
it's absolutely much more complicated.
it is. Trans widows have, this unfortunate experience and knowledge about these men, and it's not something we can pass along in a sentence. So I can say these men are perverted, and you should not
Yeah.
trust them. And a lot of people just receive that as, wow, Tracy Shannon is just such a bigot, and she's a wounded woman, a woman scorned, and now she
Just
just wants to
bitter.
punish this whole population. No, I I can definitely see these are men who have a problem. Maybe it was a porn problem.
Definitely.
Maybe they had a trauma. I mean, a lot of them are denying all this. Like, come on, that's total BS. We all know you have, at least at the very least, a very unhealthy coping mechanism, and you've made that your
Yeah.
identity or your fetish.
Yeah.
And I don't apologize for that, but we can't pass
No.
along like what we know, like, hey, do you know these men, a lot of them have tried to breastfeed their children,
Oh,
which
this
it was
is
the case
another
with
area.
my
It's awful.
he wanted to
Oh, that
breastfeed my
happened with you as well. Oh,
yeah.
goodness.
And my daughter's like, "That is so disturbing to know." You're like, now she knows as an adult, and she's like, "This is so
Yeah.
disturbing to think about." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure he probably tried to use my breast pump sometime at home alone." I mean, I just really believe that because just he was always invading my stuff. And why not that? He really believed he could make milk, and he probably did try. So, I mean, these guys have a fetish for making milk. I mean, they have a fetish for doing all the things. Why do they wear panty liners, maxi pads, and stuff? Well, my ex wore those. I found that in the documents that I discovered, like his conversations. So, like, why do they do that? You don't really need them. I mean, unless it's for a skid mark, So it's just really, really this should not be visited upon children. It's bad enough
No.
when us grown women have to deal with this, and then we have no support and no understanding, and then you've got people in society saying, "Oh, well, at least he can be happy now." Well, dang, you don't say that whenever they go cheat or run around with a younger, hotter addition. How would someone like me to say that to how would a woman, a middle-aged woman, like me to say that to her whenever her husband goes and gets a young, hot woman? Oh, well, at least he can be happy because I can guarantee you he's pretty happy, and he's pretty satisfied with himself. But that we get no empathy. We call ourselves trans widows. So we take a lot of crap about even using that term.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I get
it's
that
like,
on my channel.
yeah, like we don't even, sorry, we
Your
don't even,
husband's not dead,
yeah, no, like,
but
yeah,
he's
I
got a
realize.
dead name.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I get it. I'm not a real widow, but this is a term to describe the loss. And maybe it was good I lost him in some ways. It was so freeing, but it is more than that. It's more than losing your husband. It's a whole experience. This stuff kind of defines what that is. And people get so mad. I'm like, you're so mad at me. Like, and I didn't even get a crappy casserole. So, real widows actually get, they get a lot of frozen casseroles. And I didn't even get anything like that. Couldn't get any empathy from anybody. But, and neither do the kids. And they're expected to just, oh, kids are so resilient. Like they got no understanding, no support. And whenever they experience abuse, no help. Even when they did the right thing and told their counselor, well, she didn't do a damn thing. Because why? Because she worked inside the court systems, and her whole career would have been totally gone if she said, "Oh, this is very bad. There's this trans identifying person is doing A, B, and C," and she would be called a bigot and a transphobe. Even if that's not the reason she was doing it, even if she was just doing what she is legally obligated to do in the law and report abuse and neglect, which she didn't do. She didn't
Yeah.
do. So the kids suffer because of the prioritization of adult desires and
Yeah.
adult identities. And that is not okay. We've got to change that. We've got to keep talking about this until that changes.
Absolutely. That's why I want to platform women like you on the podcast so that we can get the word out and let more people know what's going on and the reality of the coercive control and it's domestic abuse.
It is. It is. And it's very hard to get acknowledged, but we've got to keep working so that it is acknowledged because really, we've gotten to where any type of thing that's a sexual identity related or like a adult desire, the courts are like, yeah, whatever they do, we can't acknowledge that it's harmful. Like, if they're swingers and parading in a whole different people in the house, like obviously this increases dangers to the children, and it's deprioritizing their stability, and we don't acknowledge any of that in our courts anymore. They've
Yeah.
decided in Texas courts and in most family courts in the USA that joint custody, joint decision making is always best. And I don't like, I do think in most cases that both parents should be involved with their children. But because they've already decided without hearing out, and we don't have a study on this population, and we've decided, regardless of what these adults are doing in their personal lives, which is very much on display for children to see,
Yeah.
that, we're not going to weigh that in the custody. And sometimes, maybe at the very least, that person shouldn't be making the decisions. And we did get that changed in my case. Later, we had a later went to court a second time, and I got decision-making power away from my ex because he wasn't participating. He was always holding up decisions, and I needed them to see a different counselor that actually would, if something happened that was abuse, report it, for example. And also that wasn't so many miles away from me because this court-appointed counselor was like an hour drive away. And so it was ridiculous that I got stuck with her. And he wanted us to go to it only agree for us to go to a affirming counselor. Like every freaking counselor in the world pretty much affirms this. So like
Well,
we
I
had to have
don't.
yeah, like
And I
we
get
had
loads of grief. I get loads of
good.
grief.
But we were supposed to have to go to someone that had it on the website, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. The kids were not LGBT identifying, and even if they
No.
were, I wouldn't want someone to tell them they're the opposite sex of what they were or something like that. And I mean, it was totally crazy the pressure that I was under, especially during the divorce, like trying to push me and my kids to go to a LGBTQ organization to help us understand all this. Like, no, like I have a totally good understanding of what this is. I
And I'm not
understand.
putting up with it.
Yeah, like
They didn't like that.
I'm gonna remain an apostate. I'm not gonna believe it. I know what I saw and it took some time, like to really understand, like, believe your eyes. And I know what I saw in my marriage, and I know what I saw in that counselor's office. I know what I saw in the medical records that I was able to subpoena and this is in Texas. They think we're very conservative here. The medical records actually denied reality. His medical records referred to him as a female who had a vagina, which he did not. He had an orchiectomy. He didn't even have a fake vagina. He had an orchiectomy, not even a rot pocket, and he was definitely a man. And it said he had a vaginal discharge. Like what? What from where? From his
So
penis that he still
can
had?
I just clarify, because not everybody will know what is an orchi? Sorry, I can't even say it.
What, a
Was
rot
that just
pocket?
to? No, you had an orchiectomy. Is that the right word?
Orchiectomy.
Yeah. Is
Orchiectomy
that
is
just when they chop it off?
it's the removal of testicles.
Ah, okay.
Removal of testicles. And so that's sometimes the first procedure that these men will do if they're wanting to lower the amount of testosterone in their body. So
But
that is,
he still had a penis.
yeah, still had that, at least for the time being. I think later, I think he had surgery later to, do something with that penis. I don't know exactly what, but based on the conversation he had with my daughter, I mean, it's just appalling to think about these conversations with your daughter.
You
But
don't want to talk about your dad's penis. You just don't.
yeah, or the
Especially
lack
not when
of,
you're
like,
young.
they
No.
were running through the airport, and when they got to their gate, this was on a Thanksgiving or whatever. So when they both got to their gate, he says, "Oh, all that running made me bleed down there." Like, and this is many years after the orchiectomy. So I believe there was another surgery in that area. Couldn't say what it was, but he actually told my oldest son that they went to lunch to talk one time, and he actually told him, "Oh," like he was talking about how much he suffered. I used to use duct tape to tuck, his junk, and that
It's
is
too
just
much
so
information.
inappropriate.
It
Yeah, like,
is.
he's saying, like, he really suffered because he used duct tape and therefore it pulled the pubic hairs out. Like, this is the kind of thing you should not share with your kid. You don't share that with your kid. I think that was high school. So just how traumatizing is it? Imagine you're a boy, um, maybe elementary to high school age, somewhere in there, and you realize your dad had his testicles cut off and he's got a boob job, and you go see your dad and there's bras hanging all around the house, or your dad gives you a hug and his breast rub up against you because he's got big breast implants now. It's just hard to imagine. I mean, this is a little boy's nightmare, and no one wants to acknowledge that this is psychologically harmful for children, that they have lost a parent figure being in the home full time, their father figure being replaced by this shell, this perverted shell, which is living a fetish out loud full time and pretending to be like a disability of some type. I just have to be who I am, true to myself. Like, the truth is that men doing this are men. They're fathers, they're sons, and husbands, and we shouldn't be just the empathy is totally misplaced. It's
It
totally
definitely
misplaced.
is.
They look at women like me and think I'm, the aggressor, I'm the bigot, I'm the transphobe or whatever. And because I have to be strong for these kids and for other women. Now I'm out of the raising the children phase. I don't have any more children from that marriage that are under 18. So I can speak about this publicly. It's not because I hate anyone. I hate what these men are doing to children. I hate what these men are doing to women, and I hate what all the enablers, which is a lot of women. There are a lot
Yeah.
of women who think it's really cute to have a effeminate male friend who can make makeup suggestions for them or, make fashion suggestions or, it's just real cute. Like, you're participating in the degrading of a man, and a
Yeah.
man is a good thing,
And
and
often they model themselves on women that they know. Did your ex try to look like you?
absolutely. I
Oh,
mean, I
no.
posted a picture of me and the ex, from like just like right after our divorce, and where he's totally trying to look like me and right down to the head tilt, so he
That's
was
really creepy.
totally very creepy. He had a nose job. He had a surgery there to his chin. And he bleached his hair. I went blonde young because I had early gray. So he immediately went blonde when I went blonde. I got bangs, he would get bangs. And so like the pictures that I share where it's obvious he's trying to look like me back then. I mean, we both gained weight, and I hate it when I look in the mirror and I think, like, if I pull my hair back, because he usually wears his hair back in a really flat ponytail. If I pull my hair back, I feel like I look like him. I hate that. I hate that I look like him. He looks like this big German, like German nanny, that's what I think he look like, like what you'd see in a movie, the kind of the stereotypical big German nanny. That's what he looks like. And then I see myself and I think I look like him, I feel really gross. I mean, so there is a definitely still, just like a psychological impact this has had on me that somebody, that was close to me has imitated me in this really creepy way. He used to stand in the bathroom and watch me do my makeup when we were married, and he would be talking to me, and I thought it was very sweet that he liked having all this conversation with me. The whole time he was just learning, how to do makeup, how to imitate
The way
me
you
better.
did it. He
Yeah,
was
yeah,
watching what colours you used and everything.
yeah,
Oh, that's so
everything. I mean,
creepy.
he took a bunch of my makeup when we divorced. I was so there's a product called Mary Kay. I was a representative for that cosmetics. And so he took a whole bunch of my samples. So he probably took about $2,000 worth of my makeup. And then whenever I put clothes for donation, he would go through those and take them. And then my daughter brought home some of the clothes that he took. She liked this one Disney shirt that I wore. It wasn't one that I really liked because at the time I had gained a little weight. And so I was just like, ooh. Now I look back and think, oh, I was so thin. But it was a Winnie the Pooh shirt, a pink one. And so he had taken it and she smuggled it home after a visit to give it back to me. Because she liked me wearing that shirt because she had nice, she liked the.
Yeah. Oh, it sounds like you've been through so much, and good on you for speaking out, because the more women who do speak out, the more people who realise how awful it is. If people want to find you and get in touch with you, would you like that to happen? Would you like to connect with other people who are
Sure,
going through this?
Yeah, I have a website that it's a little it's not been updated in a while. That it's going to be under construction soon. You can reach out to me on madmamabear.com, and it's mostly Texas politics because that's where I live on there, conservative and Christian opinions. So strap in before you go there because I am a fire breathing Christian conservative. But also, you can also reach me on X at Ask a Trans Widow. I'm still a fire-breathing conservative there, but not as much as I am on the other thing. And I know we're not all conservative, so just bear with me. I don't hate anybody, but I can be very direct. And I am on Facebook just under my name, Tracy Shannon, and also I have a Mad Mama Bear on Facebook. I have Ask a Trans Widow on Instagram. So any one of those places you can find me. I'm really not hard to find. If you're a trans widow and you need someone to talk to, I do manage a support group page. So this is not a psychological or counselor type group. It's just women supporting each other. And sometimes we'll have a Zoom meeting. We need to do more of those just to kind of share our experiences and give each other some tips, because raising kids especially is hard with these men. And so we can support each other in those experiences and how they undermine what we're doing good for our children. And we can also share just kind of like the whole moving on process, and even talk about some of the experiences we've had in the courts. And it's good to talk to someone that had that experience. So if you're a trans widow, reach out and we'll get you connected with some other trans widows.
Absolutely. Tracy, thank you so much for coming on. It's been lovely talking to you.
You too. Thank you for having me on. It was so nice.